All right. Well, let's get started. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. In today's webinar, we will be learning how Heineken approaches below the line marketing while ensuring creative effectiveness. Really quick, we will take care of a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, this event is being live captioned by 3Play Media. If you would like to access the captions, click the closed caption button in the Zoom dashboard at the bottom of your screen. And second, we will leave time at the end of today's conversation for questions. So at any point, feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box in the Zoom dashboard also at the bottom of your screen. So thanks again for joining us today. My name is Bridget Lang. I am the VP of Sales and Marketing here at Razor. Razor is a marketing technology company based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and SellCheck is one of our divisions. SellCheck is a tool used to evaluate your creative assets to measure for effectiveness. We leverage human vision AI and our panel of marketing experts trained in behavioral science to optimize your creative for better conversion. Today, we are joined by Heineken's Global Strategic Insights Leader, Lalo Luna, and SellCheck's Global Practice Officer, Lynn Neal. Lalo is the Global Strategic Insights Lead at Heineken. He is a passionate advocate for human understanding, as well as a digital and data evangelist. How cool is that? Utilizing technology and insights tools to strengthen the research process. Thank you for being here, Lalo.
Thanks for having me.
And I'd also like to introduce Lynn Neal, Razor's Global Practice Officer. Prior to Razor, Lynn spent 33 years at Procter & Gamble, leading their behavioral science activation for P&G brands and retailers. Lynn leads the SellCheck division in applying behavioral science on behalf of our global clients. And SellCheck works with over 1,700 brands in 75 countries, from startups to Fortune 50s, including Heineken, P&G, SC Johnson, Mondelez, Unilever, and many more. So let's tee up today's conversation. Below the line marketing. It is often a brand's final chance to ensure that the shopper chooses them. What is below the line or BTL marketing? Well, BTL is a more targeted approach to marketing, working to reach specific audiences more directly. BTL tactics include social media, content marketing, in-store, on-premise, and more. Now, despite its importance, it can be tough for an organization to align on BTL investment priorities and best practices, and can be difficult to measure its effectiveness. So today, we're going to hear how Heineken has developed a 4-phase approach to systematizing their below-the-line creative. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Lynn.
Great. Thanks a lot, Bridget. And thanks to all of you guys that are joining us today. I'm Lynn Neal, Global Practice Officer at SellCheck, and I'm joined by Lalo Luna, a Global Strategic Insights Lead at Heineken. Heineken is a wonderful partner, and Lalo, do a little shout out to our group there.
Yeah, hi everyone. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here today. I really hope that this very short story will help you to improve and maximize your BTL impact within your organizations. As Lynn mentioned, I am Lalo Luna, and I have been working with Heineken for the last, well, almost 6 years. And currently I am part of the Global Strategic Insights team. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Lalo. And I earnest thank you for sharing a little bit behind the scenes of the process and protocol that you're leading at Heineken. I think we're going to have a wonderful, rich content today. We'll also have a little audience participation as well, where you guys get to try your hands. We'll make sure we call out when that occurs. Hey, I don't think it's anything new to understand how we're all impacted by all of the touch points in our digital world here, that combination of physical and digital. As a matter of fact, they seamlessly mix with one another, whether you utilize the term omni-channel or others to describe it. We're inundated with a lot of messaging, but good messaging is effective. 71% of shopper conversion is determined by these path to purchase touch points. So we do have the ability to influence them, but the influence is greatest when it's working hardest. I love this research done by Google that says that 70% of a campaign's success is driven by the quality of the creative. So think about that. Think about all we invest in trying to find that right moment to reach our targeted shopper. But if our message and our creative isn't coming through clearly and effectively, we've kind of wasted the moment. So 71% are influenced by the path to purchase, but 70% of that effectiveness is driven by the quality of creative. In the end, the shopper sees what they see. And I know you'll speak to that, Lalo.
Thank you so much, Lynn. As you may know, Heineken is a company that really prioritizes creativity, right? We have a lot of awards on this side, but as a company, we have a strong focus on maximizing the impact of our creatives, for sure. However, a very, let's say, common bias that these big companies can have is that they can focus too much on ATL, right? It's very common to have that. So what happened, I truly think that it's not uncommon for companies of this size to underestimate the power of BTL. And also, and maybe more importantly, the potential impact that we can have. It's a low-hanging fruit that we shouldn't ignore. And at Heineken, what can I say? We invest heavily in BTL, and due to the nature of the category, sometimes due legal restrictions in some markets and different kind of local contexts and situations, often is very common the only touch point that we have, right? It's the only opportunity that we have to get in contact with consumers, apart from packaging, of course. So it's crucial for us to maximize the impact. Additionally, we really identify the significant role of BTL in the brand building process that usually nobody is focusing on that side, right? We really know that the contribution is substantial. Mm-hmm. Yet sometimes the marketeers are sometimes overlooking this fundamental part in the brand building process. And finally, we know that BTL is one of the main, and if I can say, one of the most effective vehicles to drive short-term sales. It's very efficient, and when optimized, it can really deliver very nice sales uplifts. So to leverage that, we designed a very simple 4-step process at Heineken, right, to enhance our capabilities in the BTL creative excellence part. The first part is about the development. No, this first step is about building the fundamentals. It's about providing the correct tools to our teams in the company to design excellent materials, to be more prescriptive in the process. The second step is validation. The second step is really to raise the ceiling, right, and maximize the impact that we have from our materials. In this step is very interesting because we face a couple of challenges. The first one is about creating a simple and agile, and of course, cost-effective testing process to really democratize this validation, even beyond the insights team. And secondly, and probably the most important, it wasn't about only to deliver this creative assessment, but also to deliver actionable recommendations throughout the process. So for me, that's key in this second step. The third one is about guide. It's about being more prescriptive, because it's not only about to have the right creative in place. For sure, it's 70–80% of the job, right? But then we need to think about, and we need to guide our teams on how to execute these BTL materials in the right touch points. And finally, the track and measurement part is a fundamental part of the process. We're going to see only what could be measured can be improved, right? So this is super important. So over to you, Lynn.
Yeah. Hey, what we'll do here today is we're going to step through each of these 4 platforms in the protocol that Heineken's created, and we'll begin with develop. You use the term, Lalo, on raising the ceiling. I guess develop is like raising the floor. If you can picture the challenge that Heineken faced, and it's probably not uncommon to a lot of you that are working for some larger companies or global companies, is you have a number of regions. Within those regions, you got people leading the brands for those regions. You've got creative agencies, doing their best for below the line work. There's a lot of chance for variability, and some of that might be necessary for the market, but there are some touchstones that we should have that ensure we're consistently putting our best foot forward. And the way we work through this development process, Heineken and SellCheck, is co-creating a playbook for the global organization on Heineken, and just having some moments where we can have some common truths, things that we know work best. And we broke down that playbook into several different chapters. One of them is just a foundational point of sale material best practices. And this is combining some insights that Heineken already had with the behavioral science database that we have, and really putting together kind of a cheat sheet, a playbook that the regions can use to make sure they're always putting their best foot forward. One excerpt from this amongst all of the point of sale material best practices is, how we make sure we have an intentional focal point and how we utilize that focal point to set up the product proposition. It's not just about having something that draws attention, but it's something that actually draws the attention and begins to establish whatever our messaging is for that point of sale material holistically. Second chapter of our playbook was key principles by activation. So when you think about the tactic you're using, whether an in-cap, in-out communication, digital ad, et cetera, there's an activation that you have. Maybe you have a new item. Maybe you have a package redesign. It might be on equity. It could be some promotional element. So we isolated each one of those activation events and pulled together a best practices, citing some examples on what really works. For example, on a new product launch, how do we make sure we step through the process and deliver what we must deliver on that new product launch so that the viewer understands the product, what the proposition is, and drives interest in purchasing right now? A third chapter we had in the playbook was around digital retail. And this is not only about the creative content, but it's recognizing that moment in time. So excerpts in that are not only providing best practices in digital, but also recognizing how you can lock into that moment. So we gave examples of point in time marketing that you had, when we might have a need state for the product, and how you present your proposition at that right need state to drive interest and purchase right then. And finally, we recognize that in the out bev industry here, we've got on trade. So it's not just sold at retail stores, but you're going to have pubs, bars, restaurants. And so we made sure we shared about on-trade elements. And this is really a progression of zones. How are we impacting the consumer, the shopper, as they're approaching the establishment? So giving some priming there, making us top of mind. And then at those key purchase moments, whether it's at the bar or whether it's at that table, how we're providing that last moment of influence so that we can make a Heineken product, the first on their list of choice. So all of those come together in playbooks that help us develop a foundation that raises everyone's insight. Now, from there, we need to move forward and ensure that our executions we're putting in market are going to work really hard. And this is where we came to the validation plank of the protocol. And this is making sure that we're testing our executions so that we know they'll perform in market. And this is one of those, we had a great matchup with the SellCheck 4 C's and our protocol and Heineken's internal Be Seen Drive Action framework. And Lalo, you might want to speak to that for a moment to link those things up.
No, absolutely. I think that the 4 C's framework has been super helpful for us at Heineken to really understand not only what is working and what is not working in our BTL materials, but also the assessment is super helpful to understand what kind of things, what kind of actions we need to do to really enhance and maximize the impact of those materials. And it's super simple, right? Because we are really guiding our teams on what they need to do. For me, that's the magic.
Yep, really appreciate that, Lalo. And we won't go in too much depth here, but what Lalo is referencing is that whenever they have, an execution that they're going to take to market, before they do that, and while it's in the creative phase, they'll run it through a SellCheck report. And you guys are seeing a magnified version of the SellCheck report output right here. But importantly, we go through a holistic analysis that includes human vision AI. We have the expert panel trained deeply in behavioral science. They'll analyze the piece, capture thinking across the 4 C's, but importantly, provide some recommendations. Now, this one's a little more detailed here. This is a global execution we have, but we thought you guys might be interested in actually trying your hand. So this is a real execution. This is a KV submitted by Heineken that you see there on the left, and you see our translation on the right. So obviously we're citing the Tecate brand and a Heineken brand. These are their 0 alcohol products, with the messaging being this 2024, starting from 0, tastes good, all the flavor, 0 alcohol. So this was a KV that was submitted to SellCheck and said, okay, SellCheck, how would we make this work even harder in the marketplace? And we're going to give you guys the opportunity to do that. And Bridget, this is where I'll elicit your help here. We're going to do a poll. And Bridget, if you can bring up that poll for the audience and let them know what their choices are.
Here we go. You should see a poll in front of you. What would you do? feature just one brand, create a more effective communication hierarchy, add a trial incentive of a discount or promotion, or I'm not sure. I'll crack open a Heineken and wait for the answer. We'll give our attendees a minute to answer.
I'm really curious where we land on this one because number 4 is always tempting, right?
It's very
So,
tempting. Oh, people are giving it some thought. I like it. I'll give it just another couple of seconds here. Oh, this is interesting. Any holdouts want to place their last guess?
I feel we need some Jeopardy music in the
I
background.
know, for sure. All right. Well, let's share the results. 14% said they would feature just one brand.
Okay.
43% came out as the winner with create a more effective communication hierarchy. 19% said add a trial incentive. And a solid 24% preferred to just crack open a Heineken and see what you have to say.
There you go. All good choices and all viable. I like the bias toward the crack open a Heineken. We'd certainly recommend that. But let's step through these. So several of you chose the first one, said let's narrow it down to one product. Again, it's viable, but it ends up knocking the client off strategy. So if they're bringing this together and they want an umbrella presentation of Tecate and Heineken, we could certainly make our job easier by knocking out one of the brands. However, we want to be able to stick with their strategy. So we're going to keep both of these brands in the lifeboat and just make them work as hard as possible. Likewise, the third option you have of, well, let's add a promotion or a discount. It's viable, but it changes the strategy of the proposition, right? And all the economics change on doing this. You know, the intent of the brand here is to alert people to, you know, the 0.0 available and how to start 2024. You might have the alcohol-free Januaries that you had out there. So discounting can certainly drive sales, but at some cost. And we're not wanting to denigrate the equity of the brand by just driving it on discount. So we at SellCheck would never offer that up as the marketing opportunity. Hey, sell your products cheaper. So what we're going to do on this one is go with selection number 2. So it sounded like that one was, you know, picked most frequently. There's an opportunity here to improve the communication hierarchy. And if you look at what the challenge is we currently have 4 lines of copy. We've got different colors, we have different typeface, we have different sizing, but nested in here is an important headline, and it's kind of been sandwiched in this 4-line architecture. And what happens from a cognitive standpoint is that our system 1 processors, the mode of that we're operating in when shopping, sees that 4 lines of copy, and it just looks hard to take in. And so when our brain is constantly trying to simplify our shopping effort, we can easily disengage. So the guidance on this one with our Heineken friends was, let's do some visual chunking and aid our communication hierarchy, where we really get that message out of how to start 2024 properly with a 0 alcohol content and have a taste reassurance, and then provide that close in the bottom right. So you can see what also we're able to do there is really have a clear priority of communication. The hands presenting the cans are still prominent. They're priority 1, but we've actually been able to give the headline even higher priority than it had before. So it really prompts as the call to action and the reassurance. And then this end point down in the bottom right is a great terminus. That's where we psychologically want to go to know what to do next. And so here we provide a brand reassurance, a taste reassurance, and on 0 alcohol. So a nice edit and change to it. So I'll pause here. I mean, Lalo, you mentioned about sort of getting the guidance of what to do next. Your thoughts on this one, or what your folks see across the globe when they're working on some of the what do we go do elements following the SellCheck report?
No, absolutely. I think that it's the first step is this one, right? It's super important to have the best materials creatively, of course, that could help us to drive a behavior, to really drive an action in the point of sale. But then we have this execution part, right? That it's sometimes difficult because there are a lot of bias in the sales forces, right? And usually they want just to execute and drive visibility in every touch point within the stores or online, everywhere, right? But we need to understand, and I want to go back to the 71%. We know that the path to purchase is not linear anymore, right? So we have this 71% of touch points impact. But these touch points or this impact is split in 3 different stages, right? Everything that happens just before the shopper arrives to the point of sale that is more related to the mental availability that we can build in the long term, right? With TB, with online, all these kind of stuff. But then when we are in store, we can also identify which areas in the different environments, online and offline, what are the most important touch points, when I can execute my materials to maximize the impact, to maximize the conversion, right? It's not the same to execute the materials in one aisle or the other. So we have all this knowledge, and what we have been doing here is really to guide our teams on how they can execute this material to maximize the impact. And finally, the measurement part. And this is one of my favorites, because when you see tangible results, it's a very good conversation, right, within the organization. And I want to show you and talk about this first 18 months. Well, the first year, we have been testing consistently with SellCheck during the last almost 2 years. We already tested more than 200 assets around the world in more than 30 markets. These were the results from the first year in 2022. 36% of our materials with a big, well, not a big, but with room for improvement, let's say, in a yellow score. 52% of our materials ready to go into the market. So good numbers in general. But during this first year, what we have been doing was to really build up the capabilities from our teams, right? Mainly trade marketing. And this is what happened in the year 2. This is the 2023 numbers. You can see how we improve. And these numbers are particularly from the Heineken brand. But you can see how we move the needle in the green scores. Now, these materials that are ready to be executed into the market, we passed from 52% to 62% of them. So that's for sure generating more sales and conversion in the stores. And this is amazing because we have been really enhancing the capabilities from our teams, but also our positioning in the store, right? And this is a real case in Portugal where we executed these materials that you can see the score in the green area in the SellCheck testing. And the results were just amazing, right? 16% of sales uplifts in the stores that were implemented. And of course, the return of investment was amazing. No, this was paid in the first year. So these kind of things, these kind of scenarios is what you can expect if you have optimized materials executed with excellence in the point of sale.
Well, and it's great to see this. We don't see the 2 bookends of executions. You saw the KV earlier with Tecate and Heineken, a simple 2-dimensional printed piece, but you can see the before after and imagine the kind of difference in performance. And to see this, you know, live and in action and getting the kind of results that you're getting, it's really, you know, kudos to you for the investment and optimization.
No, thanks so much. Well, this is our 4-step process, probably in a very short story, but it has been super helpful for us. It has been really helpful for our teams all around the world. So yeah, very open to your questions, guys.
Oh, great. And thank you for sharing the 4 steps and the phases. Lalo, I know it's you know, harder than it comes across in the building blocks here, but we appreciate you guys, you know, sort of pulling back the curtain and letting us share with the audience here. Bridget, I think we have time left. So if we have any questions out there, we're happy to field them on our end.
We do, yes. Thank you, Lalo and Lynn. We do have a couple questions that have come in. We do have time, so feel free to drop any additional questions that you have into the Q&A box. The first question is, what was the most difficult part about getting this adopted globally? And did you have to have a senior executive mandate the process?
Sure, this is a very good question. And particularly in Heineken, right? Heineken is a very decentralized organization. So driving change is sometimes, I can say, difficult. But as you highlighted, it's very important to have senior stakeholders on your side. But be careful, because you can have the salespeople on your side, but BTL is also important for marketeers and the finance guys, right? Because the importance that BTL has on the brand building process, and also the return of investment, the effectiveness that can generate to the organization, it's something that goes broader to simple execution. So this is fundamental for sure.
How did you create and deploy the playbooks?
Okay. I'll pick up that one, then hand it over to you, Lalo. I mean, on the creation, it was just a great collaboration between, the wealth of knowledge that Heineken had on their brands, their industries, and what we have from behavioral science and marketing expertise. And so we merged them and we made sure we put them into an actionable format that they could be used within Heineken, taking the things that Heineken knew to be true. We backed them up with the behavioral science, and then created the playbook portfolio. Lalo, if you can share on just how did you go about making these accessible to folks around the world?
No, for sure. We consider the different, let's say, retail environments where we can execute and have BTL investments, right, and executions. But then the democratization of the data is it's super important. So we ran a series of webinars all around the world with different teams at regional level, with trade marketing, with marketing. So that was super helpful to really democratize and land, let's say, this knowledge, this practical checklist. It wasn't mandatory, but it's a guideline of how they need to create the materials to be more impactful.
Great.
All right, next question. Thank you for all of this. Volume uplift can be a tricky one to measure. Can you talk about how you measured that 16% uplift in the example you showed?
Absolutely. I am an insights guy, so I take this very serious. So A/B testing, right? We found, we identify similar stores with similar conditions, right? And we execute like in an A/B mode, let's say, but also we compare the sales in the same stores versus the previous period, right, of implementation. Of course, we are very conscious that we cannot measure in 4 or 6 weeks, right? So all these were measured in, let's say in I think around 16 weeks. So the results were very robust, and of course we can track the information at store level, right? So it was not easy, but I can say robust.
That's great. Okay. And then another question for you, Lalo. How do you decide what to test with SellCheck?
Yeah, good question. Because as a company, as in the beer industry, we have several number of brands, right? So we are defining internal thresholds of investment. So we are designing, or we are, let's say, encouraging the brands that are going to invest in BTL campaigns above a specific threshold to pre-test these important assets, right? Usually 2 or 3 assets, probably 4, depending on the channels that are going to be executed, receive 80% of the investment. So we're trying to focus the testing process there.
That's great. Oh, we've got another one that just came in. Lalo, can you please share as an example 2 to 3 points from your design principles for perfect POS?
Yeah, absolutely. There are some very simple and obvious things, right? Some things related to semiotics, for example. And one important thing to mention is that all these touch points, all these principles, let's say, were organized by the different Cs. In how can we impact and how can we drive a behavior in each of these Cs, let's say, right? So for the first part of be seen, we are, let's say, putting a lot of golden rules or design principles related to semiotics, distinctive assets. How can we have a hierarchy in the communication? For the second part, not related to drive action, it's more about a call to action, for example, how we are landing the message, how we need to structure this to really use shopper language. So these are the kind of things and the kind of principles that we are providing into these playbooks.
Great. Thank you. That's all the questions that we have right now. Lalo, Lynn, thank you so much for this conversation today. Lynn's email address is here on this slide. Please feel free to jot that down or scan the QR code to get in contact with us directly. But we really appreciate you leading us through this conversation today. Thank you both. Thank you all for being here today as well. You'll be on the lookout in your email for a recording of today's webinar conversation as well. Lalo, Lynn, thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Thanks to all.
Thanks so much.